My husband called our daughter a disgrace to the family, all while he kept on partying. Our baby girl hid on the balcony in tears, but he didn't know there were cameras in the house, and I saw everything. Before we begin, drop a comment and let us know where you're tuning in from. We're really curious. We hope you enjoy listening to this compelling story. Inaya walked out of her office earlier than usual, her spirit feeling light. The meeting with the clients had been a success. The contract was signed, and the director had let everyone go home early, a rare stroke of luck in their fast-paced rhythm. She pulled her car keys out, glancing at her watch. It was 6:30. Usually, at this time, she was just getting ready to leave her desk, but today she was already settling into the driver's seat. The spring evening was warm, but not stifling. The sun was setting behind the rooftops, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and violet. Inaya turned the ignition, leaned back in the seat, and closed her eyes for a second. The workday had been intense. Negotiations, document edits, endless calls. But everything had worked out, and now she could finally exhale. On the drive home, she turned on the radio. A smooth R&B track was playing, something soulful and relaxing. The host was saying something about the weekend weather, but Inaya was only half listening. Her thoughts drifted back to the morning conversation with Jabari. He had been standing by the coffee maker, scrolling through something on his phone, and suddenly said, without looking up, "By the way, the guys from work are coming over tonight. We're celebrating the project wrap-up." Inaya had nodded, pouring herself some tea into her favorite blue mug. "All right. What time?" "Around 7. You'll be late anyway, so don't worry about it. I'll handle everything myself. Order some soul food, pick up the liquor." She remembered how 8-year-old Amari sat at the table with her half-eaten bowl of grits, swinging her legs under the chair, and asked quietly, "Daddy, are we going to watch cartoons together tonight? You promised. You said tonight for sure." Jabari didn't even lift his head from his phone. His thumbs moved rapidly across the screen. He was clearly texting someone. "Not tonight, Amari. I've got guests coming. Important people. You stay in your room, okay? Play something. You've got a mountain of toys in there." The little girl lowered her eyes to her plate and didn't say another word. She just stirred her grits, which had long since gone cold, with her spoon. Inaya had stroked her daughter's braids and promised, "Tomorrow, you and I will definitely go to the park, okay? We'll get some ice cream, swing on the swings." Amari nodded, but the disappointment in her eyes was heavy. Jabari was already leaving the kitchen, buttoning his shirt, muttering something under his breath about presentations and deadlines. Now sitting in her car at a red light, Inaya felt a flicker of anxiety. Amari was only 8, and she had been looking forward to this evening with her father so much. In recent weeks, Jabari was constantly staying late at work, coming home tired and irritable. Their daughter tried her best to stay out of his way, hiding in her room with her books and dolls. He used to read her bedtime stories, help her with puzzles, play board games. But now he barely noticed her existence. Inaya remembered how a week ago, Amari came to show him a drawing, a bright watercolor landscape she had painted at school. She was so proud of it. Her teacher had even praised her in front of the whole class. Amari held the paper out to Jabari while he sat with his laptop in the living room. "Daddy, look what I drew." He threw a quick glance and nodded. "Good job. Very pretty. Put it on the fridge." And he buried his face back in the screen. Amari stood there for another second, then quietly walked away. That evening, Inaya found the drawing crumpled up in the trash can. Her daughter said she threw it away herself because it turned out ugly anyway. The light turned green. Inaya pressed the gas, drove through the intersection, and turned onto their street. Immediately, she noticed the line of cars parked along the curb. Expensive SUVs, a few luxury sedans. She recognized the black Escalade belonging to Trevon, Jabari's deputy, the gray sedan of Desmond, their chief engineer, and the white Lexus belonging to Brianna, who worked in accounting, so almost the whole department had gathered. Pulling closer to the building, she heard the music. The windows of their third-floor apartment were blazing with light. All the chandeliers were on, curtains wide open, loud voices, laughter, and the rhythmic bass of hip-hop drifted down to the street. Inaya parked near the entrance, turned off the engine, and sat for a minute, staring up at the windows. Something in her gut told her that everything was not okay. A vague uneasiness she couldn't explain. She got out of the car, locked the door, and headed toward the building entrance. The evening air smelled of lilacs. The bushes by the porch were in full bloom, heavy purple clusters hanging over the walkway. Inaya climbed the stairs, listening to the music get louder with every flight. On the first-floor landing, an empty beer bottle lay on the floor. Probably some teenagers forgot to clean up. On the second floor, her neighbor, Miss Purley, peeked through the crack of her door. The chain rattled, and a dissatisfied, wrinkled face appeared. "They are making a racket up there today. Impossible to sleep. It's been going on for an hour." "I'm sorry, Miss Purley," Inaya replied softly, stopping on the landing. "I'm going to ask them to keep it down right now." "You ask them? You ask them," the older woman grumbled. "Or else I was fixing to call the sheriff. My blood pressure is up from all this noise." Ms. Purley slammed her door, and Inaya heard her shuffling her slippers down the hallway, muttering something about young people and a lack of home training. Inaya sighed and climbed to the third floor. She stopped in front of her door. Behind it, the music was booming. Now it was really loud. The bass vibrated even in the walls. She could hear voices, the clinking of glass, someone's ringing female laughter. Someone was loudly telling a joke. The voice was unfamiliar, raspy. And then he says, "Who said that was me?" An explosion of laughter. Someone clapped their hands. Jabari was laughing loudest of all. "Desmond, you are incorrigible. Where do you get these stories?" Inaya took her keys out of her purse, but her hand froze halfway to the lock. Something made her look up. The balcony door. It was visible through the stairwell window, directly opposite. Their apartment's balcony was glassed in, but right now, one of the panes was slid open. And there, on the balcony, pressed against the railing, sat a small figure, Amari. The girl was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. And even from here in the stairwell, Inaya could see her shoulders shaking. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Inaya quickly turned the key in the lock, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The hallway was cluttered with shoes. Boots, heels, sneakers piled up on the mat, and since there wasn't enough room, guests had just kicked them wherever. It smelled of expensive perfume, cigarettes, and something spicy. Someone must have brought jerk chicken or wings. From the living room came Jabari's voice, pleased and excited. And then I tell the client, "You want cheap? Go hire some students. You want quality? Then don't haggle with me." And he, can you believe it, agreed to our price, without a single word of objection. The guests roared with laughter. Someone slapped the table, dishes rattled. A woman's voice drawled admiringly, "Jabari, you're a negotiating genius." "Oh, come on now." Jabari was clearly basking in the attention. "You just gotta know how to stand your ground. You need character, you know? Character and confidence." Inaya took off her heels, neatly placing them in a corner where there was still space. Hung her purse on a hook. Her hands moved automatically, but all her attention was focused on the balcony. She walked quietly down the hallway, past the open living room door. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the scene inside. The large dining table was pushed toward the window. 8 people sat around it, men in crisp shirts, women in elegant dresses. Bottles of wine and top-shelf cognac crowded the table alongside platters of cold cuts, salads, and boxes of sushi. Jabari stood at the head of the table with a glass in his hand, his face flushed from the drink and excitement. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top. He waved his free hand, explaining something. No one noticed Inaya. She reached the balcony door. Usually it was kept shut, but now it was cracked open about 4 inches. Cold evening air was drafting into the apartment in a thin stream. Inaya quietly opened the door wider and stepped onto the balcony. Amari was sitting on the floor, in the farthest corner, her back pressed against the wall. She hugged her knees, burying her face in them. The girl's shoulders were trembling. She was wearing a light pink t-shirt with a unicorn on it and jeans, no sweater. It was cold on the balcony. The spring evening hadn't warmed up properly, and the wind whipped between the railings. "Amari, baby," Inaya whispered, crouching down next to her. "Sweetheart." Her daughter flinched and raised her head. Her eyes were red, swollen, wet. Tracks of tears ran down her cheeks. Her lips were quivering. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. It was obvious she had been crying hard and for a long time. Inaya felt something tighten in her chest, like an iron hoop squeezing her ribs. "Mama!" Amari sobbed and threw herself at her. Inaya scooped up her daughter, hugged her, pressed her close. The small body was shivering. Amari buried her face in her mother's shoulder and started crying again, but quieter this time, trying not to make loud noises. Inaya could feel how tense the girl was, how she was trying with all her might to hold back the sobs. "Shh, shh, I'm here," Inaya whispered, stroking her daughter's hair. Her braids were messy. A hair tie had slid to the side. "It's okay. Mommy's here. Everything is going to be okay." She took off her blazer and draped it over Amari's shoulders. The girl nodded gratefully and pressed even closer to her mother. From the apartment came music and voices. Someone proposed a toast. Glasses clinked. "What happened, baby?" Inaya asked quietly, pulling back just enough to see her face. "Why are you out here alone? Why are you crying? Tell me." Amari sniffled, wiped her cheeks with her palm. Her hands were red from the cold, too. Inaya took them in hers, starting to rub them for warmth. "Daddy?" Her voice trembled. "Daddy said I was disgracing him in front of the guests." Inaya froze. Her ears rang as if someone had struck a bell right next to her head. She looked at her daughter, at her tear-stained face, her trembling lips, her frightened eyes, and felt something hot, scorching, rising inside her, spreading through her veins. "How were you disgracing him?" Inaya cupped her daughter's face in her palms, forcing Amari to look at her. She spoke quietly but firmly. "Tell me everything in order. Don't be afraid." Amari sobbed one more time and began to speak, stumbling, swallowing words. When the guests came, Daddy told me to go to my room. I went, I closed the door, I sat there drawing. I was drawing a princess I wanted to show you. Then I got thirsty. I went out to the kitchen for some water. Quietly. Mama, I swear I even walked on my tiptoes. From the living room came a new wave of laughter. Someone clinked glasses. Someone shouted, "To us! To the team!" Inaya held her daughter tighter. "And then what?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "I went into the kitchen, poured myself water from the pitcher, and then one man came out, I guess for water too. He saw me and smiled. He asked, 'And who is this here?' And Daddy..." Amari sobbed again. Her voice shook harder. "Daddy got up fast and came over to me. He grabbed my arm like this." She rubbed her wrist, and Inaya saw a reddish mark on the delicate skin. Fingerprints. The anger inside her flared brighter. He said, "This is my daughter. She's going to her room right now." Everyone laughed, and he dragged me into the hallway. It hurt, Mama. He squeezed really hard. In the hallway, he leaned down to me and hissed right in my face. He was so mad. His eyes were scary. He said, "I told you to sit in your room. Don't disgrace me in front of people. Get out of here right now." Inaya felt her hands shaking. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. Breathing became difficult, as if the air had thickened. "And what did you do?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. I got scared and started crying. It hurt my feelings so much, Mama. I just wanted a drink. And he grabbed me by the shoulders and pushed me out here onto the balcony. He said, "Go cry out there so no one here sees or hears you, so you don't ruin my evening." And I came out here, sat down and cried. Amari burst into tears again, burying her face in Inaya's shoulder. Inaya held her, stroked her back, while staring at the cracked open door to the apartment, behind which Jabari continued to party as if nothing had happened. Telling jokes, clinking glasses with colleagues, enjoying their admiration, while his 8-year-old daughter sat on a freezing balcony and wept. Inaya continued to hold her daughter, feeling the small body gradually calm down. The sobs became less frequent. Her breathing evened out. She stroked Amari's back, pressed her close, but inside, a storm was raging. An anger so sharp and furious, it took her breath away. But she held it in. Right now, the most important thing was to calm her child. "How long have you been sitting here?" Inaya asked quietly, kissing the top of her daughter's head. Amari sniffled. "I don't know. A long time. I got cold, but I was scared to go back inside. Scared Daddy would yell again." Inaya closed her eyes for a second, gathering her strength. Then she pulled back, looking her daughter in the eye. "Amari, listen to me. You are not guilty of anything. Do you hear me? You didn't do anything wrong. You just wanted water. That is normal. This is your home, and you have the right to walk into the kitchen whenever you want. But Daddy said Daddy was wrong," Inaya said firmly. "Very wrong, and I'm going to handle this right now. I promise you." Amari looked at her mother with wide eyes. A flicker of hope appeared in them, but it instantly faded. "He'll get even madder." "He won't. Not at you." Inaya cupped her daughter's face. "I will never let him treat you like that again. Never. Do you understand?" The girl slowly nodded. Inaya stood up, pulling her daughter by the hand. "Come on, I'll take you to your room. Wrap yourself in a blanket, put on some cartoons, and I'm going to go talk to Daddy." They walked into the apartment. The music had gotten louder. The voices, too. Someone was telling a story about a company retreat. The rest were roaring with laughter. Inaya led Amari down the hallway past the living room. This time, someone noticed her. Brianna from accounting turned around and waved. "Oh, Inaya! We thought you were coming in late." Jabari turned sharply. For a second, his face twisted. Fear or irritation. But he quickly pulled himself together and smiled. "Inaya, baby, you're back already? Great. Come join us." Inaya walked silently past him, holding her daughter's hand, led her into the bedroom and turned on the light. On the desk lay colored pencils and an unfinished princess, evidently what Amari had been doing when she got thirsty. "Lay down on the bed, cover up," Inaya said, pulling her daughter's favorite blanket with kittens on it from the shelf. "Watch something on your tablet. I'll be back soon." "Mama?" Amari called quietly as Inaya was about to leave. You won't fight with Daddy? It's just that he gets scary when he's mad." Inaya stopped in the doorway, turned to her daughter, sat next to her on the edge of the bed, and hugged her again. "Sunshine, I will never let him hurt you. You are the most important thing in my life, the most precious. And if I have to fight with Daddy to protect you, I will do it. Don't be afraid." Amari nodded and buried her face in the pillow. Inaya covered her with the blanket, smoothed her hair, and left the room, quietly closing the door. In the hallway she stopped, leaned her back against the wall, and took a deep breath. Her hands were still trembling. Her daughter's words spun in her head. "He grabbed my arm. He was so mad. He told me not to disgrace him." Inaya remembered the red marks on Amari's wrist, remembered the girl sitting on the cold balcony, shivering from the chill and tears. How many times had this happened? How many times had Jabari treated their daughter this way when Inaya wasn't around? She recalled the last few months, how Amari had become quieter, more withdrawn, how she stopped telling her father about school, how she hid in her room when he came home from work. Inaya had written it off as age, a phase, thought everything would smooth out. But now she understood. It wasn't a phase. It was fear. Her daughter was afraid of her own father. Inaya took her phone out of her pocket, opened the home security camera app. They had installed them a year ago after a break-in at a neighbor's apartment. 3 cameras, one in the living room, one in the hallway near the front door, and one in the kitchen. Recording was constant, stored for a week. She scrolled back to the last hour. Fast forward showed the guests arriving, Jabari greeting them, pouring drinks. Inaya paused the playback and switched to the hallway camera. Here, timestamp 6:47 p.m. Amari appears on the screen. She walks down the hallway on tiptoes, clutching an empty glass to her chest, walks into the kitchen. Inaya switches to the kitchen camera. The girl approaches the table where the water pitcher sits, pours water into the glass. At that moment, a man walks into the kitchen. Desmond, the chief engineer. He smiles, says something to Amari. Amari answers, smiling back. Desmond leans down, probably asking her name. And then Jabari bursts into the kitchen, face red, jaw clenched. He walks quickly up to his daughter, grabs her by the arm. Inaya sees his fingers dig into the girl's thin wrist. Amari flinches in pain. Desmond steps back, smiling confusedly. Jabari says something to his colleague. Inaya can read his lips. "This is my daughter. She is going to her room right now." He smiles, but the smile is tight, fake. He drags Amari out of the kitchen into the hallway. Inaya switches back to the hallway camera. Here they are, in the frame. Jabari spins his daughter around to face him, leans down, says something, and even without sound, it's visible how furiously he is hissing. Amari recoils, eyes wide with fear, starts crying. Jabari grabs her by the shoulders, roughly, sharply, and shoves her toward the balcony door. The girl stumbles, barely keeps from falling, catches her balance, looks back at her father. But he is already turning around and walking back to the guests. Amari stands for a second, sobbing, then slowly walks to the balcony. Inaya turned off her phone screen. Her hands clenched into fists so hard her knuckles turned white. She closed her eyes, trying to master herself, but it was impossible. Anger raged inside, so strong it felt like something was about to explode. She had seen everything, saw how her husband grabbed their daughter, how he shoved her, how he didn't even look back as he walked away. How many more times had this happened? How many moments had she missed, working late, trusting Jabari? Inaya remembered an evening 2 weeks ago. She came home. Amari was sitting in her room, unusually quiet. When asked what happened, she answered, "Nothing, Mama. Just tired." The next day, Inaya noticed a bruise on her daughter's shoulder. Asked where it came from. Amari said she fell in gym class. Now, Inaya understood. She didn't fall. Jabari had grabbed her. Just as roughly, just as hard. How could she not have noticed? How could she have been so blind? From the living room came another burst of laughter. Jabari was telling something about a client. His voice sounded pleased, smug. Inaya opened her eyes, looked toward the living room. No, enough. She would no longer close her eyes, would no longer excuse him with fatigue and stress at work, would not pretend everything was normal. Inaya straightened up, squared her shoulders, checked her phone one more time, video saved, ready to cast to any screen. Good. She stepped toward the living room, stopped in the doorway. All 8 guests were sitting at the table. Some were eating, some drinking. Jabari stood by the window with a glass of cognac, gesturing, explaining something to Trayvon. Brianna was scrolling through something on her phone. Desmond was lighting a cigarette by the open window. A normal party, normal people. They didn't even know what had happened in this apartment an hour ago. "Inaya, finally!" Brianna exclaimed, spotting her. "We thought you weren't going to join us. Sit down. Come on. There's a seat right here." "Yeah, Inaya, come on in," Trayvon supported. "We're just discussing the new project. Jabari was telling us how he convinced the client." Jabari turned around, smiled at his wife, but Inaya noticed the tension in his eyes. He sensed something was wrong. "Honey, pour you some wine?" he asked, taking a step toward her. "Or cognac? We've got the good stuff, French." Inaya walked silently past him to the television. On the wall hung a large 55-inch TV. Jabari had bought it last year, was proud of the purchase. Right now, the screen was dark. "I don't need anything," she said calmly. Her voice sounded steady, but inside, everything was boiling. She crouched down, reached behind the media console for the HDMI cable they used to watch movies from the laptop. "Inaya, what are you doing?" Jabari asked. Nervousness slipped into his voice. He took another step toward her. Inaya didn't answer. She connected the adapter to her phone, plugged the other end into the TV, turned on the TV with the remote. The logo appeared on the screen, then the input menu. She selected HDMI. "Inaya, what is going on?" Jabari was standing right next to her now, leaning toward her. "The guests are here. You decided to watch a movie or something?" The guests fell silent, watching her with curiosity. Brianna put down her phone. Desmond stubbed out his cigarette. Trayvon set his glass on the table. "Not a movie," Inaya answered quietly, straightening up. She turned to her husband, looked him in the eyes. "A documentary about what happened an hour ago in this apartment." Jabari went pale, stepped back. "What are you talking about?" Inaya unlocked her phone, opened the camera app, found the saved clip, pressed play. On the big TV screen, the image appeared, the kitchen camera. All the guests turned to the screen. On the video, Amari poured herself water. Then Desmond walked into the kitchen. He said something to the girl, smiled. That's our kitchen," Trayvon said, confused. "It's a recording." Inaya nodded. Jabari appeared on the screen. The guests watched as he abruptly approached his daughter, grabbed her by the arm. Desmond on the screen stepped back. The smile vanished from his face. Jabari said something, dragged the girl out of the kitchen. Inaya switched the video to the hallway camera. Now the hallway was on the screen. Jabari spun Amari around to face him, leaned down. His face was twisted with malice. His lips moved fast, furiously. The girl recoiled, started to cry. Total silence stood in the living room. Even the music playing in the background seemed inappropriate now. Everyone watched the screen, unblinking. On the video, Jabari grabbed his daughter by the shoulders, shoved her roughly, sharply. Amari stumbled, caught her balance, looked at her father with wide, tear-filled eyes, and he was already turning around and walking away. Inaya paused the video, turned off the TV, turned to the guests. Everyone sat in silence. Brianna pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes were full of horror. Desmond lowered his head, examining his hands. Trayvon looked at Jabari with a strange expression, a mix of bewilderment and judgment. "That—" Jabari started, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat, tried again. "That isn't what you think. I was under pressure." "It is exactly what we saw," Inaya interrupted him calmly. She stood by the TV, arms crossed over her chest. "You grabbed our 8-year-old daughter, yelled at her, shoved her, just because she came into the kitchen to drink water in her own home. She was supposed to be in her room. I told her." "You told her to stay in her room because she disgraces you in front of guests." Inaya spoke quietly, but every word hit like a blow. "An 8-year-old child disgraces you. Think about those words, Jabari." He was silent, face red, jaw tight, fists clenched at his sides. "And then you ordered her to go cry on the balcony so she wouldn't be seen or heard, so she wouldn't ruin your evening." Inaya took a step forward. "I found her there, on the freezing balcony, shivering, in tears. She was afraid to come back inside because she was scared you would yell at her again." Brianna sniffled quietly, wiped her eyes with a napkin. "Inaya, I didn't know things like this were happening," Desmond muttered. "If I had understood, I wouldn't have—" "You aren't guilty of anything," Inaya answered, looking at him. "You didn't know, but now you do." She turned back to Jabari. "And I know now, too. I know this isn't the first time. Remember the bruise on Amari's shoulder 2 weeks ago? She said she fell in gym class, but she didn't fall, did she? You grabbed her then, too." Jabari stayed silent, but his face showed she had guessed right. "How long has this been going on?" Inaya asked. "How long have you been treating our daughter this way when I'm not around?" I don't hit her," he muttered. "No, you don't beat her. You just grab her arm so hard it leaves marks. You shove, scream, intimidate, humiliate." Inaya felt her voice start to tremble, but she continued. "She is afraid of you, Jabari. Our daughter is terrified of her own father." The silence in the living room was so deep you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Finally, Inaya exhaled, straightened up, looked her husband straight in the eyes. "Tomorrow morning I am filing for divorce." Jabari froze in place, as if not believing what he heard. The glass shook in his hand, cognac splashing at the rim. He slowly shook his head, a look of confusion mixed with panic flashing across his face. "You can't be serious. Because of one incident? Inaya, you have to understand, I was under pressure, closing the project. My nerves were shot." "It's not one incident," Inaya interrupted him. Her voice sounded flat, cold. "And even if it was one, that is enough, more than enough. But we can talk like adults. I am an adult, and I have made a decision." Inaya crossed her arms. "Tomorrow morning, I am going to a lawyer." Jabari set the glass on the table so hard it nearly tipped over. Cognac splashed onto the tablecloth. He ran a hand over his face, through his hair. Beads of sweat stood out on his forehead. The tension in the room was thick. The guests glanced at each other, not knowing what to do. Brianna broke the silence. She quietly stood up from the table, picked up her purse from the adjacent chair. I think I'm going to go. Excuse me." Her voice trembled. She walked quickly to the exit without even saying goodbye. Trayvon stood up too, adjusted his tie, nodded toward Inaya. "Yeah, we need to head out too. Jabari, we'll talk at the office on Monday." He avoided looking at Jabari, grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, and headed to the hallway. The other guests began to gather, silently, awkwardly. Someone muttered apologies. Someone just hurriedly grabbed their things. Desmond lingered at the living room door, walked up to Inaya, stopped a couple of steps away. "If you need, I don't know, a witness or anything." He spoke quietly, so Jabari wouldn't hear. "I saw what happened in the kitchen. I'm a father myself. I got a daughter the same age. What he did, that ain't right. I'm ready to confirm everything in court if needed." Inaya looked at him with gratitude, nodded. "Thank you, I might contact you." Desmond nodded and left. The guests filed into the hallway, pulling on shoes, zipping jackets. No one looked at Jabari. He stood in the middle of the living room alone, lost, arms hanging down. His face was pale. Shadows lay under his eyes. Trayvon was the last to leave. He was already standing in the doorway when he turned back, looked at Jabari with a long gaze. "Jabari, you seriously messed up. Hope you realize that. What we saw, I don't know how you fix that, but you better try." The door closed behind him with a quiet click. The apartment went quiet. Only the refrigerator hummed in the kitchen, and somewhere water dripped from a faucet. Jabari stood motionless, staring at the closed door, then slowly turned to Inaya. "Well, are you happy?" he asked. His voice sounded hollow. "You humiliated me in front of my colleagues. Now the whole office is going to be talking about this." Inaya couldn't believe her ears. Did he seriously just say that? "I humiliated you?" she asked slowly. "Seriously? You abuse your own daughter, and you're worried about what your colleagues will think? It's not the same thing." "It is exactly the same thing." Inaya's voice broke into a shout. She surprised herself. She never yelled, but right now it was impossible to hold back. "You care more about your reputation than the fact that you drove a child to tears? That you terrified her? That she sat on a freezing balcony and was afraid to come back into her own house?" Jabari flinched, stepped back. Something flashed across his face. Fear or shame. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Inaya, let's talk normally, without this drama. We're adults. We can discuss everything calmly." "Drama?" Inaya stepped toward him. "You call this drama? Our daughter was crying on the balcony, and you call that drama?" "I just wanted the evening to go well." He took a step toward her, tried to take her hand, but Inaya jerked away sharply. "I had important colleagues here, Inaya. I needed to make an impression. This project is a big step for my career. Amari picked the wrong moment, and I reacted. But that doesn't mean wrong moment." Inaya looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Wrong moment to drink water in her own home. "Jabari, do you hear yourself? I explained to her that I had guests." "You didn't explain." Inaya felt her hands start to shake again. She squeezed them into fists. You grabbed her arm so hard it left marks. You shoved her. You told her she was a disgrace to an 8-year-old girl, your daughter. Jabari turned away, walked to the window, stood looking out at the street. The street was quiet, streetlights illuminating empty sidewalks. He leaned his forehead against the cold glass. I didn't want to hurt her. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. It's just, in that moment, I got mad. It was impulsive. I didn't think. Impulsively, you grabbed her arm, so hard it left marks. Inaya walked closer, her voice hardened. Impulsively shoved her. How many other times was it impulsive? He was silent. Answer me, Inaya demanded. How many times have you treated her like that? How many times when I was at work and you... I don't remember, he muttered, not turning around. Maybe a couple of times, but I never beat her. Never. You know I'm not like that. Don't remember? Inaya felt a wave of anger rise inside again. That means it happened often enough that you stopped counting. Do I understand that, right? Jabari spun around. His eyes glistened. Tears or anger? I never beat her. Never. I never raised a hand to her. I just get sharp sometimes, but I don't beat kids. I'm not that kind of man. You grab her, shove her, scream, scare her. Inaya listed calmly, almost mechanically. Every word was a struggle. That is violence too, Jabari. Psychological, emotional, and it is no less destructive than physical, maybe even worse. You're exaggerating. I am not exaggerating. Inaya's voice cracked into a scream again. She stepped toward him, and he instinctively backed against the wall. I found our daughter sobbing on the balcony. She was shaking from cold and fear. She was afraid to come back into the house, into her own house. That is not called exaggerating. Jabari raised his hands as if defending himself. Inaya, stop shouting. No, I won't stop. Tears finally broke through. Inaya felt them flowing down her cheeks but didn't wipe them. You know what she told me? She said, I'm scared with him. Our daughter is afraid of her own father. Do you understand? Afraid. The words hung in the air. Jabari froze, pressed against the wall. His face went even paler. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He just stood and stared at Inaya with wide eyes. He finally squeezed out. I didn't know. Didn't know. Inaya wiped her tears with the back of her hand. How could you not know? You didn't notice how quiet she got? How she stopped coming to you? How she hid in her room when you came home from work? Jabari was silent. He slowly slid down the wall, sank to the floor, sat hugging his head in his hands. Inaya looked down at him, saw his shoulders shaking. Maybe he was crying, maybe just trying to pull himself together. She didn't know. And in that moment, she didn't care. I am filing for divorce tomorrow morning, she said. Her voice became calm again, even. It is not up for discussion. Inaya, wait. Jabari raised his head. His eyes really were wet. Let's think. Give me a chance. One chance to fix everything. I'll go to a therapist if I need to. I'll work on myself. I'll learn to control my emotions. I'll apologize to Amari, but don't divorce me, please. I love you. I love both of you. Love isn't words, Inaya answered. It is actions, and your actions say something completely different. I'll change. Give me time. How many times have I heard that promise? Inaya looked at him with a weary gaze. All the anger had gone somewhere. Only heavy exhaustion remained. Remember 6 months ago, you promised to spend more time with Amari? Read to her at night? Play with her? Go to her school events? How many times did you keep that promise? 3, 4 times in 6 months. Jabari was silent. You promised to be more patient with her, not to snap over little things, not to yell. And what? Inaya spread her hands. You shove her when she comes out for water. You tell her she disgraces you. You scare her so bad she's afraid to be at home. Inaya, I really will try. Your promises aren't worth anything, she interrupted. You promise, and then nothing changes. Or it changes for a week, and then everything goes back. How many times has it been like that? I'm tired of believing promises. She turned around and walked to the front door, took the keys from the table in the hallway, grabbed her purse from the hook. Jabari jumped to his feet, rushed after her. Where are you going, Inaya? Wait! I'm packing Amari's things. We are leaving. What do you mean leaving? Where are you going? Inaya opened the closet, pulled out a large blue duffel bag they used for trips. To my sister's. We'll sleep there, and tomorrow I'll find a lawyer and start the divorce papers. Inaya, stop, please! Jabari grabbed her elbow, but she yanked her arm away sharply, so sharply he stumbled back. Don't touch me! Her voice was cold as ice. Jabari froze. His hands dropped. He just stood and watched as Inaya took the bag and walked into the kid's room. He wanted to follow her but stopped on the threshold, not daring to enter. Amari was lying on the bed under the blanket, headphones on, watching something on her tablet. Seeing her mother, she took off the headphones, sat up. Mama, is everything okay? Did the guests leave? Yes, sunshine. Inaya sat on the edge of the bed, stroked her daughter's cheek. Pack your things, just the essentials. We are going to Aunt Zayla's to stay for a bit. For a long time? Amari looked her mother in the eyes. There was no fear in them, only a question. A calm, trusting question. Yes, for a long time, Inaya answered. Maybe for a very long time. Amari looked at her mother attentively, then slowly nodded, slid off the bed and walked to the closet. Okay. She didn't ask why, didn't cry, just started taking things out of the closet. Inaya helped her fold clothes. Pajamas, a few t-shirts, jeans, sweaters, underwear. Pulled her daughter's favorite books from the shelf, fairy tales and a volume of animal stories. Took the tablet, headphones, chargers. What about Daddy? Amari asked quietly as they were zipping up the bag. She didn't look at her mother, examining her hands. Inaya crouched down in front of her daughter, took her hands, warm little palms, looked into her eyes. We aren't going to live with Daddy anymore. I know that's hard to hear. Maybe you're sad, but this will be better for both of us, I promise. Amari nodded. There was no surprise in her eyes, no protest, only a quiet relief that she tried to hide, but Inaya noticed anyway. I'm glad, the girl whispered so quietly Inaya barely heard. Mama, I'll miss him sometimes, but I'm scared with him, and with you, I'm good. Inaya hugged her daughter, pressed her tight, tight. A lump rose in her throat. Tears welled up again, but she didn't let them fall. Not now. Right now she needed to be strong, for Amari. They walked out of the room with the bag and backpack. Jabari stood in the hallway. He was leaning against the wall, watching them. His face was haggard, eyes red. Amari. His voice broke. He took a step toward his daughter. Forgive me, please. I didn't mean to hurt you. Honestly, I was wrong. Very wrong. Forgive Daddy. Amari pressed against Inaya, not answering. Hid behind her mother as if trying to become invisible. Inaya wrapped her arm around her daughter's shoulders, shielding her with her body. Get out of the way, Jabari. Inaya, please, don't do this. Move, she repeated. Her voice was firm, allowing no objections. He slowly stepped aside, pressed his back against the wall. Inaya led Amari past him to the front door. Put on her daughter's spring jacket, pink with a hood, zipped it up, fixed the collar, helped her put on her boots, pulled on her own shoes, picked up the bag. This is my grandmother's apartment, Inaya said, turning to Jabari one last time. She willed it to me. All the property is in my name. So tomorrow, I file the divorce papers, and you start looking for another place to live. You can't just kick me out on the street. I can, and I will. Inaya opened the door. Cold air from the stairwell drifted into the apartment. You have a week to move out. If you don't move out voluntarily, I'll go to court, and you'll be evicted by force. Leave the keys with the neighbor, Ms. Purley. I'll pick them up later. Inaya, but she had already walked out onto the landing, holding Amari by the hand. Her daughter carried her small backpack with her favorite toys. Inside was the plush bear she slept with and a set of colored pencils. Inaya closed the door without looking back. She heard Jabari lean against the door on the other side, heard him exhale heavily. Maybe he was crying? She didn't know, didn't want to know. They walked down the stairs in silence. Amari held her mother's hand tight. On the second floor, Ms. Purley peeked through the crack of her door again. "Everything settled down?" "Yes, Ms. Purley, sorry for the noise." "It's nothing, nothing." The old woman looked at the bag, at Amari, understood something but asked nothing, only said, "You're doing the right thing. I heard him yelling at that child. That ain't fatherly." Inaya nodded gratefully and led her daughter on. Outside it was cool, smelling of lilacs and fresh grass. The night air was refreshing, bringing back the ability to breathe deeply. Inaya got behind the wheel, buckled Amari in the back seat, loaded the bag in the trunk, started the car. Her hands on the steering wheel were trembling. She gripped them tighter, inhaled deeply, drove away from the entrance slowly, carefully. In the rearview mirror, she saw Amari looking out the window. A single tear rolled down the girl's cheek, but she immediately wiped it with her jacket sleeve. "Everything is going to be all right, Sunshine," Inaya said, looking at her daughter in the mirror. "I promise you we'll get through this." "I know, Mama," Amari answered quietly. "It's always good with you. You protect me." Inaya felt her heart squeeze at those words. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and drove on. Away from the house where her daughter had cried on a cold balcony. Away from the man who was supposed to protect them both, but instead caused pain. Ahead lay the unknown. Divorce, court, a new life. But most importantly, they were together, and Amari was safe, and everything else could be survived. In the morning, Inaya woke up to the smell of coffee and fried pancakes. Her head was heavy, as if she hadn't slept at all, even though she had fallen into a deep sleep around 3 a.m. She sat up on the sofa, rubbed her face with her hands. From the kitchen came Zayla's voice. She was humming something, dishes clinking. Inaya got up, threw on the robe her sister had left on the chair for her, walked into the kitchen. Zayla stood at the stove, flipping pancakes. A plate with a stack of them already sat on the table, alongside syrup and butter. "Good morning." Zayla turned around, smiled. "How'd you sleep?" "Not great," Inaya admitted honestly. "But that's normal. Amari is still asleep. Let her rest. School isn't mandatory today." Zayla poured Inaya coffee into a large mug. "Here, drink. Strong, just how you like it." Inaya took the mug, took a sip. The hot coffee burned her tongue, but it was pleasant. It brought her back to reality. Sat at the table, looked out the window. The morning was clear. The sun lit up the courtyard where mothers were already walking with strollers. "I booked you an appointment with a lawyer for 11, Zayla said, sitting down opposite her. "Her name is Rosalind Price. She is very good. I worked with her on a few cases. Tough, but fair. Just what you need." "Thank you." Inaya nodded. "Zayla, I really don't know how to thank you." "Don't start." Zayla waved her hand. "You did plenty for me, too. Remember when I was divorcing Marcus? You kept me at your place for 2 months while I looked for an apartment. That was a long time ago, but I remember." Zayla put a pancake on the plate in front of Inaya. "Eat! You need strength." Inaya obediently took a fork, cut a piece. Her mouth was dry. She didn't want to eat, but she forced herself. Zayla was right. Today would be a hard day. After breakfast, Inaya went in to check on Amari. The girl was awake, lying on the bed with her tablet, watching cartoons. Seeing her mother, she smiled. "Good morning, Mama." "Good morning, Sunshine." Inaya sat next to her. "How did you sleep?" "Good. It's quiet here." Amari put down the tablet. "Are we going back home?" "We will, but not today. Daddy needs time to pack his things." Inaya stroked her daughter's cheek. "You're going to stay with Auntie Zayla today. I'm going to run some errands, and I'll be back in the evening, and we'll figure something out together. Maybe go to the movies?" Amari nodded. "Okay." Inaya dressed her daughter, combed her hair. Amari was calm, even too calm for a child who had gone through yesterday. Or maybe it was relief. Inaya didn't know for sure, but decided she would definitely sign her daughter up for a child psychologist. She needed a professional to help her process all this correctly. At 10:30, Inaya left the house. Zayla had written the lawyer's address on a slip of paper. The office was downtown, in a business center on the 5th floor. Inaya took the metro, looking out the window at the passing stations. Her head was full of thoughts. What to tell the lawyer, what documents were needed, how quickly the divorce could be finalized. The office turned out to be small but neat. A young receptionist sat in the waiting room. She smiled at Inaya. "You're here to see Ms. Price? Go right in, she's expecting you." Inaya walked into the office. Behind the desk sat a woman in her 50s in a sharp suit, with a short haircut and an attentive gaze. She stood up, extended a hand. "Rosalind Price, please, sit down." Inaya sat in the chair opposite. Ms. Price took out a notepad and pen. "Zayla called, explained the situation briefly, but I would like to hear everything from you. Detailed." Inaya told her. Everything from yesterday evening to when she and Amari left for her sister's, showed the video from the home cameras. Ms. Price watched the recording attentively, not interrupting. When the video ended, she nodded. "That is very serious evidence. With material like this, you will have no problem getting a divorce and full custody of the child." "I don't want to strip him of parental rights completely," Inaya said, "just so he doesn't live with us, and so visits with our daughter are supervised." "Reasonable." Ms. Price wrote something in the notebook. "We will file for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, and document the psychological abuse of the child. We will request restricted visitation. That means visits will happen only with your consent and in your presence." How fast can this be done? Divorce usually takes a month or two through the courts, but considering there is a minor child and evidence of improper conduct, we can expedite the process. Ms. Price looked at Inaya over her glasses. "The apartment is in your name?" "Yes, it's an inheritance from my grandmother." "Excellent. That means he cannot claim the residence. Any joint assets?" "The car is in my name. We bought the furniture together, but that's all small stuff. Let him take what he wants." "Okay, we will demand child support. Not for me, for Amari. She has a right to support from her father." Ms. Price nodded, continuing to write. They talked for another 40 minutes, discussing details, documents, timelines. When the conversation ended, the lawyer handed Inaya a business card. "If anything urgent comes up, call any time. I'll start preparing the documents today. Come tomorrow, sign the petition, and we file in court." Inaya walked out of the office with a feeling of strange relief. Yes, a hard road lay ahead, but at least now she knew what to do. There were concrete steps, a plan of action. She headed back to her sister's. On the way, she stopped at a store, bought groceries, decided to cook something for dinner to thank Zayla for her help. In the toy section, she saw a stuffed animal, a white bunny with long ears. Amari had recently said she wanted one like that. Inaya bought the bunny too. She returned to her sister's around 1 in the afternoon. Amari was sitting with Zayla on the couch. They were watching a movie and eating popcorn. Seeing her mother, the girl jumped up. "Mama, Auntie Zayla showed me old photos. Of us at the beach. I was 3. "Yes, I remember." Inaya smiled, hugging her daughter. "We went to Myrtle Beach back then. You built sandcastles all day long." She pulled the bunny out of the bag, held it out to Amari. "This is for you." Amari gasped, grabbed the toy, hugged it tight. "He's so soft. Thank you, Mommy." The rest of the day passed quietly. Inaya cooked dinner, fried chicken with greens, made a salad. Amari helped set the table, chatting about something of her own, laughing. Zayla told stories from work, and even Inaya smiled a few times. In the evening, they actually went to the movies to see a new cartoon Amari had wanted to watch for a long time. Sitting in the dark theater, eating popcorn, for a while Inaya allowed herself to just be here with her daughter, not thinking about the divorce, the court, or the future. The week went by fast. Inaya filed the divorce papers. Ms. Price handled everything competently and sharply. Jabari called several times, first begging her to return, then getting angry, accusing Inaya of destroying the family, then asking for forgiveness again. She didn't answer the calls, only texted once. "You have 1 week to move out. Leave the keys with the neighbor." A week later, she and Amari returned home. Jabari had already moved out, taken his things, clothes, laptop, left the keys with Ms. Purley, just as Inaya asked. The apartment was empty, quiet, but it was a good quiet, calm, safe. Inaya walked into the kids' room. Amari sat on her bed, looked around. It felt strange without Dad. She had gotten used to him. Inaya sat next to her. "Are you sad?" Amari thought a little. "But I'm not scared. That's good, right?" "That is very good, Sunshine." Together they unpacked the things they brought from Zayla's. Inaya washed clothes, cooked dinner. Amari did homework at her desk, periodically asking her mother something. A normal evening, of which there would be many more. When Amari went to sleep, Inaya sat in the kitchen for a long time with a cup of tea, looking out the window at the night city, at the lights of houses in the distance, thinking about what would come next. The divorce would take time. Then she would need to build life anew, maybe change jobs, maybe sign Amari up for some club. But the main thing, her daughter was safe. She would no longer sit on a cold balcony in tears, wouldn't be afraid to walk into the kitchen for water, wouldn't flinch at loud voices. A month later, they were already living their new life. The divorce went quickly. Jabari didn't contest the terms, evidently realizing he had no chance. The court sided with Inaya, gave her full custody, and gave him the right to visit once every 2 weeks, but only in the mother's presence. Inaya signed Amari up for a child psychologist, a kind woman in her 40s, with a soft voice and intelligent eyes. After the 3rd session, she told Inaya, "The girl is coping well. She has a strong psyche, and most importantly, she feels your support." That was the most important thing. Amari really was changing before her eyes, becoming more open, cheerful. She started talking about school again, showing drawings, asking for bedtime stories. One day she said, "Mama, can we go to the park on Saturday?" "For the rides? Of course, Sunshine. And buy ice cream?" "And buy ice cream, the biggest one." Amari hugged her mother, pressed close to her. "I feel so good with you, Mommy. Thank you for protecting me." Inaya felt a lump rise in her throat. She hugged her daughter tighter, kissed the top of her head. "I will always protect you, always, no matter what happens." On Saturday, they really did go to the park, rode the carousel, ate cotton candy and ice cream, took pictures by the fountain. Amari laughed, ran from ride to ride, and her eyes shone with happiness. That evening, when they returned home, Inaya helped her daughter change into pajamas, tucked her into bed. Amari yawned, hugged her new bunny. "Mama, are we always going to live like this together, without fights?" "Always," Inaya promised. "We are a team, you and me, and nothing will separate us." Amari smiled and closed her eyes. A few minutes later, she was already sleeping peacefully, serenely, without nightmares. Inaya left the room, pulling the door shut, walked out onto the balcony, the same balcony where a month ago she found her daughter in tears. Now flowers stood in pots here. Inaya had bought them last week, geraniums, petunias, small rose bushes. She laid a soft rug on the floor, brought pillows. This place was no longer a place of fear and tears. Now it was their cozy corner. She sat on a pillow, leaned her back against the wall, looked at the stars. The city hummed, cars drove by below. Somewhere music played, people laughed. Inaya thought about how much had changed in a month, how scary it was to make the decision to leave, how anxious it was to file for divorce. But right now, sitting here, she understood. It was the only right decision. Her daughter was happy, calm, safe, and that was the main thing. Inaya closed her eyes, inhaled the cool evening air. Inside her chest, it was warm and calm. Ahead of them waited a future, unknown but full of hope. They would handle it together, always together. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.